Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Doing Well, the Wellbeing Science Insights Podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I am your host, Lu Ngo, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Doing Well. On this show, we normally talk about all things well-being, and especially with the personal focus. And today, let's talk a bit more about work, because I'm not sure about you, but to me, work is a big deal. It's a big part of my life, and probably 80% of my time at work is remote. And I'm sure if you're tuning into this podcast episode, you are curious about the remote environment and how to make it better. So today we're going to talk about building social well-being in virtual work environments with our wonderful guest, Helen Morris Brown. Helen is a business psychologist with over 20 years experience in helping people to be more productive and satisfied at work. Her aim is to support people to develop an inner confidence and sense of self-worth so that they have the resilience to deal with the stuff life throws at them. Since the success of her TEDx talk in 2015, she has been a keynote speaker at international conferences and continues to deliver workshops and seminars in organizations. She hosts a business podcast, Work Happy, in which she and her guests help solve people's workplace problems. Thank you so much for joining us, Helen. And it's so late where you are as well.
You're so welcome. I'm a night owl, so this suits me perfectly. And everyone else is asleep.
Yeah.
It's disturbance free.
Yeah.
Well, it's perfect work environment.
Yeah, it's kind of great as well because, we're on two opposite ends of the world and, the timing is just kind of like, how are we going to talk to Helen? And thankfully, Helen made it happen. So we appreciate it.
The benefits of the virtual world.
Exactly, which is the topic that we're going to talk about today. And, I just love, getting to solve problems at work, getting to know the work environment better, especially, outside of these podcasts, I get to run the team at LMSL in case our audience and yourself are not aware. And I think it's just a really wonderful challenge because I get to work with colleagues from all over the world, but at the same time, it's kind of hard to navigate through all these challenges, communications wise, culture wise, right?
Mm-hmm,
and so you're into this space, you've been doing this for a long time. I'm curious to know how you got here and why you decided that, this is something I really wanted to help people with.
That's quite a long story, so I'll try and cut it short. It's a long story because I left school with no qualifications. I wasn't able to focus at school, and I didn't find my dream career in senior school, where most people have a sort of yen for what they want to do. And I was not supported to fulfill my academic potential. So I left school with nothing, and that limited my options somewhat. It meant that I could go to drama school or I could go into the military and be a PE teacher. And I wasn't going to go into the military. So I went to drama school and they didn't ask for any qualifications. So that's where I went and did nothing for 2 years, pretty much. Well, I did do some stuff, but it's probably not broadcastable. And, was very good at what I did because I was a practical person and I trained to be a stage manager. And I went into production in TV and theatre. But I was very good at sport at school and I carried on the sport. And there was an opportunity, a production opportunity. I was working in the States and I saw an advert in the paper at that time. There was no digital stuff. This was in the 90s, early 90s. And I saw an advert for people to train as personal trainers. And I just did it while I was there on a job. I did this personal training course over 3 weeks and I loved it and came back to, long story short, came back to the UK, changed careers, decided to train fitness trainers in the UK to become personal trainers because no one had heard of it in the UK. And so I did that. And while I was doing that, I got really interested in the psychology of change and people changing just through contact with me and the knowledge and information I had. And that was the first time. I mean, I loved production and all of that, and I got a bit of a buzz from it. But the buzz of seeing someone else actually change as a result of having come in contact with me was better than any drug I had taken, going back to the 2 years of drama school, and I'd experienced quite a lot of that. So it was amazing. Gave me that dopamine hit, just like, this makes me happy, seeing people achieve their potential just through contact with me. And I thought, well, maybe I should study this. Maybe I should study psychology, having been told I couldn't do any of that. So I did it as a mature student. I did it in my late 20s when I'd got 2 kids under the age of 4 and decided to study for my first degree. And I did that and then went on to a master's. I'm sort of saying, I did that. I did that pretty frenetically, sort of hyperactively, hyper-focused on that, and came out with a degree in applied psychology and went on to do a master's in occupational psychology, which sort of linked to the production stuff I was doing. Bear with me, it does make sense, the sort of fitness training, because I was thinking, well, I don't want to work with kids because I don't have any experience of that. I don't want to do the clinical side of psychology. I don't want to do forensics. Actually, which part of psychology leads me to working with people every day and seeing them change? And it was occupational psychology. So that's what I did. And for the first 10 years after I qualified, I worked in organizations, basically going in and doing health audits, figuring out what was going wrong in the organization and then helping them to resolve it, putting in the remedial care, if you like. And that was with individuals, it was with leadership teams. It was what most trainers and psychologists do today. They go in, they implement and design long-term management development programs. Some of it was selection and assessment, all of the stuff you learn in psychology. And then I sort of have historically changed my career or changed paths every 5 or 6 years. That's sort of standardly what I do. I stuck with that sort of uncharacteristically for much longer than I had in anything else in my life, the management training, but I was starting to get a bit burnt out by it. And I did a speech at my wedding, my second wedding, where afterwards someone said to me, you should do that for a living. So I did a TED Talk. Got married in 2014, did the TED Talk in 2015, and that launched my speaking career. And what I've discovered is that the information I impart in those conference speeches and through podcasts is just as effective as a 6-month management program in an organization, but much more time effective for me. So that's what I do now. I go in and I speak in organizations, and I have a Q&A at the end. I might do a panel discussion, might be interviewed, but it's no more than one day.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that now since 2015. So I know from that experience that the audience, the people receiving that information, are taking as much from it individually as they did in all those years. I was sweating blood and tears over 6-month to a year management programs. Same deal. All people want is information, how to help their lives at work, and they just want that golden nugget that enables them to say, I can do that. Yes, I'm going to take it away, because it doesn't matter whether it's happening in 45 minutes or 6 months. We only have the capacity to really take on board those key nuggets that stick. That's how we learn as humans. We've got too much else going on in our lives. So that's why I'm here now. It's why I do what I do, and it's why I do bite-sized stuff that has a high impact on people who hear it. Just because and it goes right back to what I said at the beginning, still gives me the same buzz I had when I first had a personal training client, my first personal training client in LA, when I saw them, walk away from that session and the sort of 8 months I was working with them, a changed person. And I still get that buzz today when people are at the end of a conference talk, or I get feedback from the podcast, they say, you said something that changed the way I'm going to approach it. And I do things differently from now on. And that, that's what drives me. I don't have much, there's no magic wand. Despite the stuff I did in my TED talk and the stuff I do in my conference speeches, it's not about magic. It's just information I have. And if people are tuned in to listen to it, then great. They will take from it something that might possibly help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you for that. I think it's a long but also interesting story because, careers are like that. It's not like, oh yeah, one day I just woke up and I did this and I've been doing it for 20 years. Like that happens. But at the same time, I find that, careers like yours, where you go through a lot of ups and downs, are even richer in the sense that, we learn so much from each stage. Like I'm sure you're applying principles you learned from when you were doing fitness training to this day, because, it's definitely fun in certain ways, and you can sort of think about it, especially speaking of the virtual work environment. A lot of people in the fitness industry had to work virtually in COVID. And, now they're actually doing that even more. So this conversation we're going to have today will apply to, I would say, most industries. And, it's going to be fun. So we'll have a good time doing that. Before we go into that part of the conversation, we've got a section we called Have You Met Ellen? Have you met Helen? My voice. And this is where we're going to get to know you better through some of your favorite things. And my first question, which is my favorite question to ask my guests, because I love reading, is what is your favorite book?
Oh, well, unlike you, I don't read. This is why I left school with nothing. I don't read fiction. I've always been obsessed with non-fiction books, factual books. I remember I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian, but I remember at the age of 12 reading a book called Meat is Murder, and my mother just looking at me totally perplexed, saying, why on earth would you want to read that book at the age of 12?
Yeah.
And I said, well, it's really interesting. There's facts and it's, I'm really engrossed in it. And of course, she was very encouraging, but I've never really liked fiction. And that's because I am neurodivergent. I have ADHD. And when that all came into perspective in adult life, it made total sense to me. And I thought, oh, that's why I can't read fiction. I cannot attend to that story, that thread that takes me off into a sort of fantasy world doesn't work. So I read a lot of factual books, autobiographies, biographies I read. And on the theme of attention deficit disorder, ADD or ADHD, I am currently reading a book written by a woman who had a diagnosis of ADHD in her 50s. And she's written a book called Better Late Than Never. She's called Deborah Mahoney or Marnie. I mean, I don't know how you pronounce that. I've never met her. And it's factual, it's funny, it's informative. I'm totally engrossed in it. She has my attention. So those are the books that have my attention. Anything factually or, information about people's lives comes back to psychology. I'm always interested in human behavior. So that's the book I would recommend for anybody who might have an inkling that they have a neurodiversity like ADHD, or someone who's thinking that they should have had a diagnosis and haven't. Very interesting book.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing about that particular book. Now, I'm sure this is probably going to be a little different, but what about movie?
Yeah, I am a real movie lover. because I don't have to read. Well, apart from international films, foreign films where not in an English language. Yeah, I love films. I see a lot of films, and it's Oscar season, so there's everything out there at the moment. Favorites in the last few weeks: Anatomy of a Fall is a thriller. If you like thrillers,
Oof, I love that movie.
great. That's an international film. That's got subtitles.
Yeah.
So if you don't like reading, don't go and see that, or see a dubbed version. Poor Things with Emma Stone, Mark Ruffalo, William Dafoe. Crazy film, science, fantasy, black comedy. Again, psychological. Love it. I'm not going to describe anything more about that, otherwise I'll spoil it.
Yeah.
But go and see it. Just crazy film. And of course, I think this will take all the Oscars. It's Killers of the Flower Moon. Before it leaves cinemas, or if it comes back to the cinema over Oscar season, go see it. It's political, it's poetic, it's moving. You won't forget it once you've seen it. Absolutely brilliant movie.
I think it's not that the last one's not in cinema anymore, right? Probably
not, but once it sweeps the board at the Oscars, I think it might come back.
Yeah, definitely. Anatomy of a Fall, the one that you mentioned at the beginning, I saw it recently, and mind blown. I might say it's just kind of like this. It's like really French, and then at the same time, it's also all about life as well. You know, it's not just French, but it's kind of like, what an interesting perspective on life. And not a lot of people will get intrigued by it, because at the beginning I was kind of like, oh, what is that movie? I was recommended to it. And I was kind of doubtful at the beginning, but after I left the cinema, I was like, wow, that's a lot to process. Yeah.
Stick with it. Great movie.
It is a long one, but it's great. Yeah, definitely. Okay, how about podcasts? I know you host a podcast yourself, but I wonder if you actually listen to podcasts. And if you do, what would be your favorite show?
Yeah, well, again, a bit like books. And because I do host a podcast as well, I tend not to listen to many, certainly not as many as my kids do. I mean, it's the millennial thing. Just listen to podcasts. I mean, need a podcast recommendation, go to someone under the age of 30 or under the age of 35. But again, there is this theme with things I give attention to in my spare time, and it's anything that explores human behavior, the workings of our brain. And there is a long-running podcast in the UK called Life Changing, where a journalist actually interviews people after they've had a major life-changing event in their lives. And I just love hearing stories about people's lives, how they've changed, why they've changed. And of course, in this podcast, it's about a seminal moment where something happened, whether it was an injury. There's one which covers a kidnapping. There's one about a gambling addict, all sorts of things. And it's a variety of that as well, which of course with my brain helps. It's not the same thing. And I'm just obsessed with anything that discusses or sort of covers human behavior. And I have been ever since I studied my first degree as a mature student.
Yeah, intriguing. That sounds like a great podcast. I might need to check that out as well. Thank you for the recommendation.
Life-changing.
Yeah.
Life-changing.
Yeah, that sounds great. I've been thinking about that concept quite a bit because, you know, especially on this show, when we talk about well-being, a lot of people kind of like, you know, stories of our guests, for example, like they go through something life-changing and then they decided to do the career that they're doing now. And I guess that's, you know, that's where it's quite fascinating because a lot of people go through things like that and it changes their whole life, especially when it comes to their career. So I find that to be fascinating personally.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you have a role model or maybe multiple role models. And if so, who are they?
Not really. I used to ask this question in management training, guys. Hey, who's inspired you? And they'd sit there and go, oh, I don't know. But I understand that neurotypical people have role models. This is a thing. People look up to people. So I don't have traditional role models. I've never had posters of famous people as a kid, except James Dean, Jimmy Dean. You're probably too young for that. The Hollywood movie star, early 20th century. He was beautiful, absolutely. He had this perfect symmetrical face. He was stunning. And his picture made me smile. So he's the only famous person I had on my wall. But there are people who've inspired me and given me the confidence to pursue certain goals that I might have done. And there's two in particular, the drama teacher I had at school and the sports teacher I had in my senior school. They're the only two people in authority or who had power over me, aside from my parents, who understood me. They allowed me to be myself. And because of that, I worked hard for them. We had a great relationship. I shone at drama and sports, A-star pupil from the moment I joined that school to the moment I left. Anything academic, no thank you. Nobody inspired me. Nobody got my attention, and I didn't work for them. And I'm actually still in touch with the sports teacher because I recently moved back to an area that's close to where I went to school. And if it hadn't been for her, I suspect I would have got into all sorts of trouble. The wrong crowd, I probably would have, been committing crimes at quite a young age. So I'm grateful to her, and I'm so glad I've been able to tell her that in later life, the fact that she had such a great impact on me. She was still so humble about it. She had no idea. She was like, oh, okay, well, that's just what I did. And that's what's lovely about someone who inspires you, that they don't actually know that they're doing that. It's why I would never call myself a guru.
Yeah,
people say, "Oh, you're the well-being guru, aren't you?" No, absolutely not. When people start thinking that they can influence other people, they stop influencing other people. I do what I do because I just love doing it, and these two people did the same. They showed it. They demonstrated that to me.
Yeah.
Just do what you love doing, and if people want to do it with you, they'll follow you and respect you, collaborate with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Those are my role models.
Yeah, beautiful. A list of wonderful people I can see there. And, it doesn't have to be famous people, honestly, because I do feel like we learn more from everyday people that we get to cross paths with because we know them on a personal level. And there's so much more to learn when you actually know the full story. Yeah. While I think famous people have a certain qualities to them and we can learn certain things from them, I just find that, like your story, I learned a lot from, teachers, educators, people that actually love what they do and inspire me to do better in life. And I think that's the beauty of life.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Finally, in this part, we've got a question to you about a course. Now, I know that you mentioned earlier that you dropped out and, then you went back to studies and things like that. Must have been a whirlwind, and there must have been so much happening there. But I wonder, through all that journey, which course that you've taken has been the most influential to you?
Well, I mean, there are the 2 degrees. Unlike the 3 degrees pop band. No, that's just a bad joke. It's getting late for me. the jokes are of a lesser quality after 11 o'clock in the UK. So we'll probably scrap that one. So apart from the 2 degrees, which were hugely influential. I mean, the fact that I literally left school with what we have in the UK as GCSEs and A-levels, a sort of senior school, end of senior school, and then you go on to further education. And before you leave school, you do A-levels. I had 1 GCSE because you couldn't take exams in drama and sport then. And that was cooking, home economics, because I could cook. And so to get a psychology degree and get a decent 2-1 psychology degree, having never studied before, was hugely influential to me. And then them saying, well, actually, you know, go on and do a master's, and getting a distinction in my master's was just phenomenal. So they were the most influential. But most recently, I have discovered, because of my physicality and the fact that I medicate my condition through exercise and activity, which means I'm always on the go. I'm like a non-stop motor. So the course that influenced me most recently was a yoga retreat, because I wanted to do something to challenge me, to stop, to slow down, to find a peace physically that wasn't, you know, paddleboarding, playing tennis, going to the gym, running, walking, whatever it was. And that was hugely influential. And so I'm doing it again. And I will be doing them regularly, because they're just as effective in terms of calming my nervous system as the physical stuff, which I didn't realize until last year.
Yeah.
So that's the course. It's not about professional development. It's not learning Spanish. It's not about going to a course to do better jokes. It's just, you know, inner peace.
Yeah.
Inner peace and, centering myself.
Beautiful. I mean, it's part of well-being. And a lot of people say yoga is so hard, I can never do it. And you know what? At a certain point in life, you're just like, oh, it works.
Yeah,
Wonders.
it does. It does.
Yeah.
Look after yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And, you know, now we're on that train of well-being. You know, a lot of people on this show, especially our guests, have talked about yoga as part of like a practice for well-being. So I find that to be really on topic. So let's talk about well-being. Let's talk about the virtual work environment and what we can do to build that social well-being. To start off, I know that you mentioned earlier that a few people will say that you're the well-being guru, even though you don't really agree with that yourself. I'm sure there's a reason they say that, and I'm sure you know quite a few things about well-being. So, what do you think of well-being personally? What does it mean to you?
Well, having now been in this field since the early 90s, it is, you know, it still feels like I'm learning about it every day. And particularly with the rise of digital communication, the whole concept of well-being is changing. Since COVID, the concept of well-being is changing. It's always changing. And what I thought I knew changes. I'm open to learning. I'm open to new experiences. I can't define it as one thing, because I know it's going to change again. All I can talk about is what's happening today for people at work. And I finally decided to write a book on it, because I think I've just about got enough information now to write the Work Happy book. And I'm not plugging it. I promise I'm not plugging it, because I haven't even finished it yet. I'm writing it this year, but the chapters, which is everything about well-being, some of the chapters are basically the answer to your question. It's what does it mean to people at work? And that includes me. You know, I'm a working individual, so I try and keep happy and satisfied and well at work. And what I've learnt over the period of time I've been working in this field is that there are some key components of well-being in the workplace. Number one, and I learnt this in my master's degree actually, and it's still stable today. Number one is autonomy over job demands. This is the master key to reducing stress at work. Doesn't matter whether it's virtual, doesn't matter whether it's in person. You have to give people the freedom to do their work in the way that they want to do it. And if you do that, they'll be happier and fitter. They will experience well-being from that point. It's not just about giving people autonomy over their work. You have to develop a positive work culture. And that work culture has to have a tangible, physical thing that people can touch. So that means you have to give people support. You have to give them opportunities to connect with everybody within the organization. These are physical things. They're not just concepts. Culture is often seen as, oh, we'll have a nice work culture, but how do you actually achieve it? And that's where people go wrong. That's the bit they don't understand. So a positive work culture. So you have to support your employees to help them feel connected and included. And now, this is what I'm talking about, things changing. There's a lot more work around equality, diversity, inclusion, embracing difference, understanding your neurospicy employees, embracing them, your disabled employees, learning from them, accommodating them, supporting them, making adjustments for them. That's the kind of culture that, well, it inspires people to work for you if you've got that kind of working culture, because they know that despite their difference or because of their difference, they will be included in your, or invited, welcomed into your organization. So if you can foster that kind of culture, your staff will be well. They will experience well-being.
Yeah.
Another thing that makes people happy and well at work is to give them opportunities to develop. That's why you asked the question about courses. We're human, we're here to develop. It's survival of the fittest. It goes right back to Darwin. It's in our DNA. We want to develop, give people opportunities to develop and see progress, see them. You know, I talked about it being the thing that gives me the buzz, seeing people developing. But actually, when you know for yourselves, if you go through a course or you learn something new, you see progress, you achieve something, triggers those happy hormones, you feel great about it. And once you trigger those happy hormones in people, they're going to be better and fitter at work. Something else that I discovered in my master's degree was a healthy workplace, the physical workplace. And when we started talking about it in this module, they dedicated a whole module to it. It's like 3 or 4 months of talking about ergonomics in the workplace. I thought, what's this got to do with psychology? But then, you know, we've already discovered I wasn't very bright at school. So it was taking me a while to get into the swing of studying. And then I thought, well, of course, it makes perfect sense. It's obvious if the environment isn't conducive, people aren't going to be able to focus on their work. A badly designed workspace is going to be an unnecessary distraction to people. So you've got to have a safe, healthy, physical workspace that doesn't jar people, doesn't trigger people, allows them to focus totally on their work and not think about it. And a lot of people don't get that right. And these are just the sort of top 4 or 5, or there's loads of these, but these are the key things that stand out and have sort of been a defining part of well-being for me at work since I started studying it academically. So the final thing to talk about really is work-life balance. And the responsibility for that tends to fall on employees, not the employer. And I think that's wrong. I think it's unfair for a start. I think organizations need to do more to help people with that by actively promoting a balance in their employees' lives. Because that, particularly since COVID and working from home and people having to understand that and navigate the dynamics of communicating with people without seeing them face to face, and discovering that work-life balance for themselves, thinking, wow, I still get the same amount of work done and I'm able to take 20 minutes more for my lunch or take the dog for a walk or go for a run. They're discovering for themselves the benefits or autonomy, managing their own time, being able to do the things that they want to do, whether it's the laundry, the cleaning, the walking of the dog, a quick paddleboard at lunchtime, whatever it is, surfing. It just makes people happier. So autonomy over work, healthy work-life balance, and don't put the responsibility on them. Encourage people to have a healthy work-life balance. Make sure they're not working out of hours. Make sure that the presenteeism isn't happening in your organization. It sucks. Presenteeism is not a badge of honor. Shouldn't be happening. People should be paid to do the job that they are, there to do, and the rest of the time should be their own, and they can manage it how they like. And so all of those aspects, and there are many more, contribute to people feeling happy, healthy, and satisfied at work.
Yeah. Yeah, not only did you define well-being, in the workplace, you also debunked a bunch of misconceptions that we have, when it comes to work. I think a really big one is that, presenteeism, and another one is the fact that a lot of employers, especially I hear from my friends here in Australia, I'm not sure about the UK, but a lot of employers have started to ask their employees to come back to the office full time, thinking that would boost productivity and so on. And in fact, it's actually caused a lot more people to quit. And find better jobs with flexibility where they can actually work virtually, because just like you were saying, their time is theirs, and they get to be productive while managing their lives better, and that makes them happier, and that will make them stay longer in a certain work environment. So even in this virtual environment, we see that there's still social well-being. And that's the interesting part, because a lot of people kind of saying, oh, virtual work will never be a thing because, how can you connect with your colleagues and have social well-being? But we have learned, especially after COVID, that it is a thing. It can happen. So how would you define social well-being at work in the context of, we have both the in-person work environment and we have the virtual work environment?
Well, it's no different to any other aspect of our lives, really. I mean, we're human and we're hardwired to live and work in social groups. Social support is a key element of health psychology, which is a profession in itself. It's one branch of psychology I was thinking of going into because it linked to the personal training and stuff, but I didn't do it in the end. And social support is key to that. And we seek out connections with other people and we work in groups. It's just how our brain is wired. There's nothing we can do about it. It's the same brain in our head that we had thousands of years ago. We've adapted a little bit, but really all the connections, all the stuff that happened thousands of years ago, all drive us to find a mate, to survive and protect our young so that they can carry on the line of our genetics. And at the root of that social behavior is communicating effectively. Because if you can't communicate effectively, you can't build those social relationships. And we're not taught it at school. It's an assumption that we can do it. We're expected to live and learn and to come out of that process, the end of our lives, fantastic communicators. The trouble is, Lu, most people don't fully engage with the learning bit. They might experience it, but they don't reflect on it and understand why they are who they are and where they can do things differently. They certainly don't learn from their mistakes. They just live it, and they're expected to know how to behave appropriately. And some people just don't get it. Managers don't get it, do they? They don't trust their staff. They're overly controlling. They make unreasonable demands. And this all has a damaging effect on the quality of relationships and their willingness to collaborate and support each other at work. Because if you have that sort of toxic environment, which social media is full of at the moment, now people are able to declare and expose what's happening in their workplaces. I hear so much about toxic workplaces. It's still going on. It's not, just part of the human condition that people need to control other people. It just doesn't work. And as you said, we're expected to communicate and build those social connections without seeing people face to face. that digital technology. So it's becoming much harder to make those genuine connections and develop social groups that aren't fake or fantasy, or just the number of followers you have on X or Instagram. That's why I covered it in my TED Talk before COVID, when, and TikTok and all of it, all the same messages apply. It's why I get asked to speak about that topic specifically, about communicating in a virtual environment. I get asked to talk about that at conferences more than anything else, because we're all still struggling to collaborate and communicate with each other while we're working from home, or even sitting in an office that doesn't promote a collaborative approach to work. It's the same thing. Doesn't matter whether you're sitting at home behind a screen or whether you're put in a pod at work, you're still isolated.
Yeah.
So it's down to the senior people in organizations to improve that. They know it's crucial because it affects their bottom line. When the social element of their staff is lost, when that collaborative element is lost, the bottom line is hit hardest. And that's where business psychologists come in and say, you know what you're doing here? Your staff aren't talking to one another. They're all working in isolation. It's going to hit your bottom line. We're social creatures. We benefit from that communication. And they go, oh, I hadn't thought of that. I was just thinking of my bottom line. And it's only when we draw their attention to it, they go, oh, right, okay. Yeah, that makes complete sense. So when organizations do get that right, people do perform better and the retention goes up as well. They'll be more committed to that organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And it affects our well-being in life as well. The social well-being at work has a very big part to play in our well-being overall. I found that for myself personally, when I'm thriving at work, in the sense that I'm connecting with my colleagues well and discussing ideas and being open and honest and, have this sort of healthy collaborative approach, I find it that my life flows so much better. Maybe top management might be a bit tough on me, but, as long as I'm collaborating well with my colleague, I find it to be great. Whereas I remember there was a long time ago where, one of the previous work environments I was in, it was also mostly virtual. And while they say all these nice things, in front of one another, behind our backs, they were not that collaborative or supportive, or, it's kind of like that sense of social well-being was definitely not there. And it felt toxic, just like what you were saying, the toxic work environments. There's so many kinds of toxic work environments, but I feel like the one where you cannot really collaborate with your colleagues and don't have that sense of social well-being is the worst, because you feel isolated. It's not about being at home on your computer by yourself working that felt isolating. It's the fact that you didn't feel included. You didn't feel like part of the group. You didn't feel like, you're appreciated, and you felt liked to. And I think that was probably one of the worst things that I'd ever been through. And it just impacted my overall well-being so much. Like, I felt depressed. I was not able to focus. All I wanted to do was to, find some sense of relief, because I enjoyed the work, but I couldn't stand the social environment.
Yeah. And, people in organizations, the higher ups, the leadership teams, they don't know how to do it effectively. They don't know how to foster that culture of collaboration, and they don't really understand. Well, I'm making a generalized statement here. Some people listening to this will do this well in their organizations, but do you know what? They're in the minority. There might be 10% people in organizations getting that right, because they just don't know how to do it. And the thing you're just talking about links back to us being primates. And again, we're hardwired to flex our muscles to demonstrate our power and control by isolation, exclusion, the pecking order, the alpha females, the alpha males, whatever it is, it's still happening. It happens in organizations, and it's usually the people who are doing it lack the confidence, lack the abilities, lack the skills, and they're flexing their muscles because they feel threatened by younger, more skilled, more intelligent people coming in. So that's probably at the root of any exclusion you've experienced. It's something I try to teach my daughters from a very young age. It's like you're being excluded because they feel threatened by you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's your beauty, intelligence, anything else, just hang on to that. Hang on to the fact that you've got those skills and you have to just flex your muscles and get back in there, assert your right to be part of the group. It's tough. It's tough. It's part of the human condition and part of the social group element. It's just our very simple brain. It all comes back to the fact that we are very simple creatures. We do not have the capacity to change that wiring that says, no, this is what we do here because this person is a threat to me. Therefore, I'm going to exclude them. I'm going to give them a hard time and they're going to have to earn their right to be in this group.
That is a very interesting point, and I would like to build on that because this is something that one of my best friends is going through at the moment as we speak. In fact, I had this conversation with her yesterday evening. It's a very long story, but essentially, she's being isolated because she is doing better, and she was selected for the role even though she had less experience than the colleague that is really experienced in the organization. Hence, she's being isolated, and she felt defeated. And yesterday, when I talked to her, I said, why don't you apply some sort of strategies in this context? Because, there are ways you can assert your position and your talent and, who you are in the organization. You don't have to accept the fact that because that colleague has seniority and, they are saying all these things to upper management, that's all you're going to get. And that plays into our conversation today, because one of the things that we want to discuss with you is how assertive a person is in the work context, because that helps them to, I think, first of all, to ground themselves, and second of all, to foster that sense of social well-being, because they feel like they have a place to stand in the organization, in the team. And they're able to show a bit more of themselves, especially for people that are, on the timid side. They might be introverted or they might be new to the organization, especially in virtual teams. And this is what I find with my team as well. They tend to kind of pull back a little bit and they don't say much and they don't assert themselves. So assertiveness is really important in this context. And it's a big part of communications, which is the topic that you study at length and you talk about, in your TED Talk and on other platforms. So what do you think to be some of the benefits, the key benefits of assertiveness in virtual teams?
Well, I mean, this gets all my neurotransmitters firing in my brain. I'm off in all different directions: confidence, assertiveness, exclusion, inclusion. This is the content. This is the content I'm here for. Just love it, and I love learning about individual stories and people's. I love solving people's problems. I hate to see people unhappy at work. I hate to see people being targeted at work, them feeling sad or, depressed or anything. It's just like, no, stop it. Life is too short. And when people are feeling isolated and they're getting to a point where they are experiencing stress because of someone else's behavior or a group of people's behavior, it's just totally unacceptable. And that, I coach people as well, and confidence and assertiveness comes out as always the key thing that supports people most when they come out of a coaching relationship. They're often there because they're trying to navigate challenges or whatever, but quite often assertiveness and confidence comes out as the one thing that you can train in people, you can help people with. And that goes back to my personal training days, giving people the confidence to start looking at their body as something that needs care, attention, and you can train people to do this. And you have to learn how to do it, because it does affect the lack of ability to assert yourself, or that lack of confidence is going to affect your ability to perform effectively at work, to be able to perform without any distractions. It's crucial.
Yeah.
And I mean, what we were talking about before was the negative effects of not having that at work, not being socially connected, not having that collaborative connection with your colleagues, teammates, whoever it is. So when organizations, when teams, that when they get it right, they will benefit from people having a sense of belonging, because they'll be motivated to work for the team for the greater good, not just their paycheck. They'll forget about the paycheck. That'll be a sort of sidebar. We're on to Maslow's hierarchy of needs now, which is a sort of academic piece that says, you know, the actual food and stuff and the ability to feed yourself is right at the bottom. Everything else is, you know, at the higher end of that pyramid, is all about the human connections, the ability to sort of stretch yourself, to learn more about yourself, achieve more. And that's what we're talking about. If you protect your employees, if you give them the basics and they don't become a distraction, you give them that social support, then from that will come the happiness, the assertiveness, and the confidence. And it's a cyclical thing. It's not just a one-off thing. You have to keep doing it. You have to do it, review it, apply it, and keep learning. So, you know, if all that's going on, people are going to be happier. And when people are happier and healthier, the end result is they're more satisfied at work and they're more productive. So everybody wins.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in terms of assertiveness as a topic, here's how this is an insight into how my ADHD brain works. You were just talking about stuff. I was thinking, okay, well, I don't have enough room for that in the first book. So now here's book 2. Haven't even written the first, Lu, but book 2, benefits of assertiveness for social well-being in virtual teams. Teams.
Yeah. You know,
so
I'm curious because, you know, I started out my career being in COVID and started working remotely. And, you know, thankfully the organizations that I've been with, they are really flexible. But now that I think about the fact that a lot of my friends are still working in the office, you know, I don't know where my career will take me. You know, maybe one day I'll have to be in that situation. I know a lot of people are dealing with that as well, you know, going from one job that is completely remote to another one that is, you know, in person. What would be that difference between assertiveness when you're working with, you know, an actual team in person versus when you're working with a team virtually?
I don't think there is any key difference to the approach. It's just the method in which you do it and the things you have to be aware of when you're communicating with people in a virtual environment. So it's about communication that can happen in either setting. It's about having adult conversations, not emotionally charged, childish conversations where you're able to state your needs, your wants, and the reasons why it's going to help you. Where we are inherently designed to help other human beings when we're not in that space where we feel threatened. When we're in a trusting space, we are inherently wired to help other people. You can try it one day. You can ask people on the tram, when you said earlier where you took the tram to work, just ask someone if you can have a seat. When you're not disabled and you don't look like you need a seat, ask someone if you can have a seat. 99% of the time, I set that as an exercise for people in assertiveness and confidence. I say, next time you're on public transport, just go up to any random person and say, please, could I have that seat? They'll do it. So win-win. You get to learn to speak up, get your needs met. You might not have the need to sit down, but it just gives you the confidence to say, actually, people will help me. If I ask, people are more likely to help me than not. People don't understand that. But from a very young age, child development, we know that humans help other humans. It's in our DNA. And being assertive actually engenders respect. Again, can happen in a virtual environment or a live environment. Yeah. So here's the thing, Lu. When people are confident and assertive and are able to express what they want and they need, they're more likely to be respected by their colleagues. Mm-hmm. And what we believe, what we're told in our education, perhaps our parenting style, depending on how you've been parented, we are sort of trained to be quieter, less aggressive, less disruptive. Don't bother that person. Be polite. Don't do that, particularly in the UK. My God, particularly in the UK. It's not polite to state your needs once and the reasons why. Okay. But here's the thing, when you do it, people respect you more.
Yeah.
Wow, the confidence of that. But great. God, I love your confidence. I love the fact that you can ask for that and get it.
Yeah.
I learned that from a very young age, just a natural thing. Just, just ask for stuff. So that in itself improves collaboration in virtual teams as well. Because if you can model that, if you have someone in the team modeling that and requesting that from other people, what is it that you want? Okay, we haven't heard from so-and-so. What is it that you need and want? Encourage people to declare it. And then you soon learn, again, it's something that can be trained. You soon learn that people are there to help you. It helps with conflict resolution, assertiveness and confidence, because when people are comfortable expressing their ideas and perspectives assertively, not aggressively, in a positive way, it's going to lead to better creativity and innovation in that team. It sounds counterintuitive though, doesn't it? Sounds like, no, don't stick your head above the parapet. Don't tell us that. But actually it's true.
Yeah.
Because it fosters that collaboration, and a problem shared really is a problem halved. Share the workload.
Yeah.
Can't bear cliches, but actually that has stayed with me since being very young. It's so true.
Yeah.
And you can't get someone to help you with the problem unless you tell them what it is.
Yeah, definitely.
We're not mind readers. Tell me what it is and maybe I can help you with it.
Yeah. You mentioned something quite interesting when you mentioned about, how it is in the UK. I'm sort of still new to Australia, so I find it kind of hard. And when I started my career here, one of the first things that I did was kind of that, I tried to be assertive and ask for what I deserved. And instead of getting given what I deserved, I was sort of pushed back in the sense that, oh, you're asking for too much. You're a millennial. And I was shocked because I was asking for something really basic, which is on the contract. And from there, I was kind of like, I have this PTSD of, I shouldn't be assertive and ask because I might get pushed back. And also I'm an immigrant, what am I going to do? And at the same time, as I mentioned to you, I work with a remote team. A lot of people on our team are from countries that are a bit more on the conservative side, like in Southeast Asia. I know, from a Vietnamese background, a lot of people in Vietnam are kind of like that. They don't feel comfortable asking. A lot of people are better now at, asking or asserting themselves. But most of my friends, I will say, would be on the similar train of, not being able to be that assertive. Especially, when it comes to the remote work environment, it's kind of like, I'm navigating through this new work environment. I'm meeting with a challenging team, and I find it like they don't want me to ask questions. So there are a lot of factors at play, especially the cultural aspect of it, because each culture deals with this very differently. Based on your upbringing, your background, and everything that's happened in your life. Like especially if you have traumas and PTSD, it's so hard. So those are kind of like some of the key challenges that I can personally see from the people that I've worked with. But I'm sure when it comes to being assertive, that people must encounter a whole heap of problems and challenges. So what would they be, and how can we overcome them?
So many. And you're right to touch on the cultural differences and the differences within different organizations. People, have their own experiences and they're personal to them. But what I do try and help people to do is break it down to this and remind them to break down the sort of what appears to be an overwhelming fear of, I can't do this and I can't do this. And if I do that, then this is going to happen. The sort of stories we tell ourselves based on past experiences. I try and break it down to this human connection element and remind people that we are all human.
Yeah.
And we do want to help one another. And it's very rare that people are going to say no to you if you approach it in the right way. So this is where people go wrong. And I have no idea what you've been doing or how you've been doing stuff. There are examples where it's right to say, well, going back to the example you gave of your friend who's going through these issues and has recognized that it's because she's probably bringing something that might be a threat to other people. The thing to say there and to remind yourself of is, I think that's going to be a you problem rather than a me problem. I'll leave you to work that out while I get on with my work quietly, studiously, and do what I do well. You work out while you've got an issue with me. I'm not going to pay attention to it. I've got too many other things to do.
Yeah.
I think you'll find that's a you problem, not a me problem.
Yeah.
And the other thing I can't remember, because this is what happens with my ADHD. I go off on a train of thought and I can't remember what the other thing was, but I'll come back to it in a minute. But the challenges that remote workers face in being assertive, they are real, but we can overcome them because, like anything linked to assertiveness and confidence, you can train it, people can learn it. So particularly without the benefit of face-to-face interactions, it's going to be difficult for people to communicate effectively their needs, wants, and concerns. And that's because of a number of things. Digital communication, written messages, whether it's email or WhatsApp or other messaging platforms. I say in my TED Talk, these are really prone to misunderstandings or misinterpretations. They make it really difficult for people working remotely to assert themselves effectively. It's why I did the TED Talk, and it's the biggest reason I get asked to speak about it, because we're still learning how to overcome it. Most people are rubbish at it. 90% of people still can't do it. And I mean, you'd have to see the TED Talk. I'd have to remind myself of the TED Talk, but it's sort of adapted since 2015. It was a long time ago. What I talk about now is this clarity of the message. Matching expectations is the key thing. It's absolutely key thing. And doing what you said you do. So you're building trust. And if you can do those things and you can model those things for other people, people tend to mirror it in return. So if you consistently match expectations, people tend to fall in line with you. If you consistently do what you said you're going to do, people tend to fall in line. They go, oh, I'm working with Helen. I know what's happening here. I'm going to have to turn up on time. Otherwise I'm going to get a reminder that I'm not there on time. But most people don't learn at the pace that other people who are really focused on making this work. They're not keeping up with it. So you have to lead the way with it. You have to take people by the hand and show them how to do it in terms of digital communications. The biggest thing people have to learn not to do is to tackle really difficult issues in writing. Just stop doing that. If you've got an issue, speak to someone about it. We're human. We don't, emails, in Neanderthal man didn't have an email. They spoke to someone. They said, "This is my wife. You can't approach my wife. She's not yours. She's mine. Go away. I'm not going to write you an email. You did, that hunting trip we did. I need to talk to you about that. They're not going to, write a message to them.
Yeah.
We are born and wired to communicate verbally to people, particularly when there's an emotional issue at hand. Just don't try and do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Elon Musk sacking people over email. What? Stop it. I know it's an extreme, but people still do. They think it's okay. It's like,
yeah.
I wouldn't have minded.
That reminded me of something I saw on LinkedIn the other day. I saw this guy, I think he used to work at Google, and he got let go through an email, and the email was stone cold, didn't have any sort of no recognition of his contribution to the organization in the years that he had been there. And so he actually rewrote the email himself. And he was like, if I had been you, I would have written the email this way. And obviously he'd moved on for a couple of years now. He's doing his own thing. He's thriving. And I found that to be brilliant. It's hilarious. It's brilliant. Like, this guy is, asserting himself in this space. He's no longer there, but he's still asserting his presence and sort of teaching people how to appreciate their team more. And I think that, it kind of goes both ways. We got to assert ourselves, and at the same time, organizations need to kind of see that. But since we've covered this,
there's no excuse, Lu, because we can do this. We can have video conversations with people anywhere in the world. There is no excuse for writing to someone when you have an issue, conflict you need to resolve. You don't do it in writing. You do not deliver bad news in writing. There is no excuse for not having that, for not looking them in the eye and having a conversation with them. It's just a cowardly way of approaching it. It's totally inexcusable.
Yeah. Definitely.
And that is the issue with remote working and making those social connections, because we do lack, when we're not on a video call, we do lack those facial and body cues that we're used to, that our brains are hardwired, and that's why we struggle with it so much. Our brains are like, no, I can't process it. So we compartmentalize the stuff. We can't take in the whole picture. We're not as effective. We're not as productive. And it's not good. It's not good. Mm-hmm. So the more you can actually see people face to face, the better it's going to be. You talked a bit about power dynamics. It's the same thing whether you're in person or virtually. Virtual power dynamics are a thing. They're going to virtual work environments often reinforce those power dynamics that make it difficult for people to be assertive. Whether it's someone who's junior to the team, someone new to the team, you've shared your own experience of that, members from marginalized groups. And of course, I will always fight the corner of neurodivergent employees, deaf, disabled staff. Most organizations do not take these people's needs into consideration unless they are run by disabled people or neurodivergent people. It's only then that you start to get an understanding or accommodating people in a reasonable, appropriate way at work. 90% of the time, there's an ableist approach to remote working. It just permeates through most workplaces. Particularly in a virtual setting. Questions about any adjustments, very unlikely to happen. The number, since COVID, the number of organizations I've worked with and helped them with their recruitment online, virtual recruitment. It's like, have you asked the question? How are we going to ask this question about whether someone needs an adjustment? Might not be able to see you, might not be able to read what you're doing. Have you thought about that? No. If they can't do that, don't want to employ them, why not? They might be brilliant. Just because they have an impairment or a health condition does not mean they cannot do this job effectively. Stop marginalizing people based on your own assumptions. It's, permeates through most workplaces, I'm afraid, as does the isolation disconnection thing we were talking about. Remote working definitely leads to those feelings of isolation and disconnection, which is going to make it harder for people to be confident and assertive in their communication. So that's a difficult one to navigate because it's chicken and egg. Mm-hmm. You want to give people the freedom to work from home, but does that result in them being isolated or disconnected? So, but do you want me to go on to how to overcome those challenges? I feel like I've brought the mood down, really. It's just like, these are all the problems.
Yeah, of course. That's part of the question. So if you could bring us some strategies to overcome the challenges, that would be helpful.
The main thing is to have clarity in communication, clear, direct language, avoid ambiguity. It's what I talk about in the TED Talk. And when there is conflict, please do it in person. And by in person, I mean so you can see the person's face. You're talking to another human being. You're not communicating via email. Do what you said you're going to do. Use plain language. Just be clear in what you need and what you want. And so use verbal communication whenever you can, face-to-face video communication whenever you can. Because in that format, the nonverbal cues are going to help you. And in terms of general well-being, assertiveness, confidence, this applies to anything. Just pay attention to and work on building good relationships. Because building strong relationships with other people you work with is going to help create a supportive environment where those individuals feel more confident in being assertive.
Yeah.
Those two things, the confidence sort of comes first, which enables them to be assertive in any format, no matter whether it's writing an email, on a video conference, getting involved in webinars. People need to be heard. And so they need to be clear and confident that their voice is there to be heard. I think this goes back to, it also goes back to what I was saying about the personal training stuff. If you don't look after yourself physically and emotionally, if you're not healthy, if you don't pay attention to yourself, then you're not going to feel confident, or you're going to feel less confident, and then you're not going to be able to be assertive. So look after yourself, because it will build emotional resilience. Get fresh air, eat healthy food, not all the time, enjoy yourself, and exercise within your limits. Just look after yourself, whatever that means for you, do it. And when you feel better, when you trigger those happy hormones, when you get the serotonin, oxytocin going, you all know about that. You've had it in other previous guests have talked about it. It's what happens when we look after ourselves. The confidence will come because you'll see progress, you'll see development, you'll get that buzz from it. The positive reinforcement. And of course you can manipulate the positive reinforcement as well by getting feedback. You can actually ask for it. Learn more about yourself. Now, this is often said in organizations, seek feedback. HR are very big on this. And it's quite an ableist approach. It doesn't take into account the neurodivergent people who are like, last thing I'm going to do is ask for feedback. Why would I? I never understood until my diagnosis why I had such a visceral response to feedback. But no, it's not happening. It's just the way my brain is wired. But I have learnt to put myself in a position where I feel confident, safe, and willing and open to feedback. And then I ask for it, because I've learned that it's really helpful in the right place at the right time. And again, not in a virtual setting unless you can actually see somebody. So in terms of people at work, get into the habit of having a cup of coffee or something with whatever your drink of choice is, with a trusted colleague, someone who you respect. And they might be your role model. I don't know, just someone you like sitting with and chatting with and you respect, and just ask them a question once in a while. But you have to make sure that you're ready to hear the answer. Pick a day when you're feeling open and receptive and resilient. The question's really simple. Like, how am I doing? Is there anything I should be looking at developing? Is there anything I do that's like grating or triggering or annoying? Something I should stop doing? If you get into the habit of asking somebody that, they'll come up with constructive stuff. Now, that's going to build your confidence in terms of people saying, no, you're doing great. That's the first option. People can say, no, you're doing great. Or they might say something like, yeah, well, I did notice the other day that when you were in that meeting, you were not waiting for the other person to finish speaking. And that, I don't know whether you're aware of that, but that kind of thing. It's like, really? What's I doing? Quite often it is something we're not aware of. It's, it's just not on our radar. It's not something we do. When I first did presentations, a long time ago, not well before I qualified as a psychologist, actually, I was doing a presentation, and someone said to me, do you realise that you say at the end of each sentence? Absolutely no idea. I was quite young. I said, no, absolutely no idea. And they said, there's this thing called Johari's window you should know about. It's about being aware what other people see and what you see, and opening that window so that what you know is what other people know. And unless you ask for feedback, you cannot open that window any wider. You don't know what you don't know, essentially.
Yeah.
And I hear people, it's a tick people have when they speak in public. The ums and the ahs, the ums and the ahs, that's a sort of typical thing. But as a sort of end to sentences is very common. Didn't know I was doing it. Once I was told about it, I stopped.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about learning. So Helen, we're actually a little bit over time, and I think you've actually covered, not only the practical tips as to how to overcome these challenges. You've also mentioned not one, but actually a few practices that people can try. Actually, you really like that one about asking for feedback and asserting yourself through that. I think that would be really helpful for our audience, especially for those that are tuning in and they're kind of like, hey, I'm a junior, I don't know how to navigate the workplace. I think that's a great place to start. And you also mentioned a little bit about the neurodivergent world and, the fact that people are not that accepted, or, the fact that in the screening process, they're just sort of cut off in the first place and not considered, which is something I think you wanted to talk about in your open mic. So we've covered quite a bit there. Is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap up?
No, I don't know. Maybe I should sum up the sort of strategies for remote workers to improve social well-being, and then we've got a wrap up at the end. Maybe I can just run through those. And then if you're happy for me to do that, then that might bookend it quite nicely.
Yeah,
how does
definitely.
that sound?
Yeah, definitely.
So here are my top tips for remote workers to improve social well-being. Build virtual connections. Use any virtual tool that helps you. Video conferencing. Just build connections with colleagues to create that sense of community. you can do that by joining virtual communities, if you like. Connect with others in your field, your industry, other online communities, or professional networks. If you do that, you'll build your confidence in developing those collaborations with other people. Schedule regular social breaks. So the opportunities I was talking about with getting feedback from someone who you work with. Set aside time to socialize with colleagues, even if it's just a virtual coffee break or chat. Reduce that sense of isolation and detachment from people. Set up a time where you can sit and talk about anything other than work, or work if you like, but actually it's a social time. So schedule regular social breaks. Participate in other virtual events. Go to things that are not linked to your work. Learn new things. Participate being the operative word. Engage with the process. Talk to others. Contribute. It will build your confidence and your assertiveness. You can take advantage of local opportunities. Look for any opportunity for social interaction. Co-working spaces, networking events, anything where there's like-minded people who you're going to enjoy spending time with. Look for those opportunities. Step out of your comfort zone and get involved with them. And the last two things that I've stuck with forever since I was a personal trainer: look after yourself. Self-care. Engage in activities that promote your own well-being. Exercise, hobbies, spending time with family and friends. Get the happy hormones flowing regularly so you don't end up in a state where you are questioning yourself or feeling depressed. That it takes work and energy, and you have to put time aside each day to do that. And finally, I ended my TED talk on it, and I end every speech on it. Do what you said you'd do. It builds trust quicker than anything else I've ever mentioned. Be reliable. People will love working with you. They'll love collaborating with you. It'll build your own confidence and your own assertiveness, and you just will feel better for it. But you have to lead the way. Do what you said you'd do.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for summarizing all the tips. I think we've got plenty there for our audience to try. And yeah, I definitely love the last one the most as well. I think it's very important for all sorts of settings, not just work. And before we let you go, we would love to get you to share with our audience where they can find out more about your work, especially because I know you have a book coming, and I'm sure you have a bunch of things that are exciting and people can learn from.
I just had a physical response when you said I've got a book coming. No, I've got a book in the writing. This is, I've had to, talking of confidence and assertiveness, I've had to say it out loud so it actually happens. There are things on paper now. There are things being written. So it is happening. Work Happy. Work Happy is the name. That the podcast Work Happy is out there. New series starting very soon. I've got quite a bit of work in Australia, in the last 2 years. I don't know what's happened to the algorithm on my Google searches, but I've had a lot of connections from Australia. I'd love to work more in Australia. I've done virtual talks. I've done coaching. I've done presentation skills coaching. If people want any of that, if they want a bite-sized skills session, if they want coaching, if they want me to talk at their conference, they can just find me at helenmorrisbrown.com. And LinkedIn, put my name in. I'm the only Morris Brown on LinkedIn, so quite easy to find.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll definitely follow your work to find out more about the topic.
Thank you for having me. It's been great having the chat. Really enjoyed it. Making a new connection. Really enjoyed it.
You have been listening to Doing Well, the Wellbeing Science Insights Podcast, produced by the Wellbeing Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website, we.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Lu Ngo. Thanks for tuning in.